Few announcements before we start today. Next week will be the first week of October, and that's when we'll begin our Dark Happenings month. So, like I've said before, I plan on doing a podcast every week in October on something quote-unquote dark, and then I plan on doing one, a special one on October the 31st. November and December are going to have altered schedules because of the holidays. November probably won't notice because it's just going to be me taking the week of Thanksgiving off. But December, I think I'm going to take 2 to 3 weeks off. So, and that's just so that I can, prepare for the holidays, spend time with my friends and family, and all that good stuff. Alright, so, let's just get into the case for today. And it's going to be the case of the missing Beaumont children. Now, when we refer to the Beaumont children, it refers to the children of Jim and Nancy Beaumont. Jane was 9, Arna was 7, and Grant was 4. They lived in Somerton Park, Adelaide, in Australia, and they went missing on Australia Day in 1966, which for all of you people out there who don't know when that is, that's January 26th of 1966. And, it was a normal day. Their father was gone on a business trip. He was a salesman, I believe, and he had gone to work, and he wasn't supposed to be back for a couple days, but he ended up getting back later that afternoon. And the kids really wanted to go to the beach, so their mother Nancy allowed them to go to the beach. She gave them enough money to take the bus there and back. And it was really, a short trip. It wasn't anything major. And Jane apparently was a very responsible girl. She apparently took, really, really good care of Arna and Grant. And I guess she was kind of a little mother hen. And so Nancy felt comfortable letting them go to the beach by themselves. So on this particular day, they left home at 10 a.m. to go to Glenelg Beach. And they were supposed to be home by 2 p.m. And like I said, Jim returned home early from a business trip, and when he got there, Nancy was just incredibly panicked. She could not find the children. They had not returned home. And so, he tried to calm her down. They went looking for the children, and when they couldn't find them, they eventually called the police. And this call came in around 7:20 that night to the Glenelg police. And they began immediately to search with the family. They started searching, the beach and the surrounding area. By 8:40 that night, Brighton, West Beach, and Henley Beach are being searched by other local police departments. So by that time, it was kind of a community thing. They had gotten other police departments involved. They had started, earnestly searching for these kids. 9:50 that night, the Sea Rescue Squadron offers to help search the coastline, and apparently the police decline them to do this as an official thing, but tell them that they can search it voluntarily if they want to. And at 10 p.m. that night, Jim allows the police to issue a radio bulletin on the children. Police continue to search, through the night, and they search surrounding areas and boats in the area and things of that sort, and there's just no result. So let's kind of talk about what happened on the beach that day. there's several witness reports. In fact, I think they said hundreds of witnesses came forward. And some of them reported seeing the children at the beach that day. And they said that when they saw them, they were with a tall, tan, thin-faced, blonde man. And Arna had come home a couple of days before, teasing Jane about having a boyfriend at the beach. And Nancy really didn't think anything about it. She thought it was just Arna being, a kid and teasing her older sister. But looking back now, it is rather suspicious that a child as responsible as Jane would just be freely spending time with this man if she didn't have prior interaction with him. And another thing that was strange was when the kids left home, their mother had given them 6 shillings and 6 pence, which was enough to take the bus to and from and to buy a small snack like popcorn or something small. However, a local shopkeeper at a bakery said that Jane had come in earlier in the day, bought cakes and a meat pie, and paid with a £1 note. And now, for all of you who don't know, £1 is more than 6 shillings and 6 pence. And so there was a composite made of the man, but unfortunately he was never identified. And this family, they didn't give up hope. They kept searching, and they kept, waiting for their children to come home, hoping that they would, and sadly, they never did. But 2 years later, in 1968, Jim and Nancy received a letter. And the letter was supposedly from Jane. She claimed that a man in Victoria was looking after the children, and that he wanted to give them back to the parents. But the parents had to come and meet him at a local post office to get the children. Local to him, not to Jim and Nancy. I apologize. They had to make the trip. And that not to tell any police, because if they told the police, then the plan would be over. Well, Jim and Nancy told the detective that was investigating their children's case, and they drove to this Victorian police station. Post office, not police station. And no one ever showed up. After this incident, they received another letter, and it claimed that the man had spotted the detective and that they would now never get the children back. And it came out later, many years later, that this was a hoax. Someone had written it just to be funny, which it was not at all funny. And it was never a letter from Jane. Like I said, the police in this case, they actually really put a lot of effort into finding these 3 kids. It was it still is, I believe, the largest scale police search in South Australian history. So they worked themselves just trying to find these kids, and unfortunately they never did. And at one point, they even hired a famed psychic from, I believe, maybe the Netherlands or some such, to come and try to find the children. And he gave several different stories, quote-unquote leads, and none of them were useful. My take on most of those people, I do genuinely believe that there are some people out there with talents and gifts, but most of them that do it for, gain like this man did, because a local businessman paid this man. And most people that do it for money or fame, in my opinion, aren't real. So let's get into suspects. And there are probably 4 or 5 suspects. I'm only going to tell you about 2 because the other couple of suspects, to me, the connection there is either non-existent or so thin that I just don't believe that it's even kind of worth discussing. But these 2, I do actually believe are a strong possibility, especially the first one. The first suspect is Harry Phipps, and his son, Hayden, claims that he saw the children at his home as a child, and his father was extremely abusive to Hayden, and Hayden believes that he's the one that kidnapped and killed the children. Now, at one time, Harry Phipps owned a factory, and the police ended up, I believe it was in like 2004, searching the factory because of the tip from Hayden, and there was an investigation done by, I want to say, Channel 7 in Australia. And so they ended up doing a ground penetrating radar search of the factory, and they didn't find anything. Then in, I want to say 2013 or 2000, it may have been the beginning of this year, but I believe it was 2013, they went back out and took soil samples and things to try to find anomalies. And they did find that the soil had been disturbed, but they didn't find any bones or anything that could have indicated that the children were definitely there. But a pair of brothers did come forward and say that shortly after the children went missing, that Phipps had paid them to dig a large hole for him. And they believed that he was paying them to dig the children's grave. Again, none of this has been proven. Several searches have been done. But from what I understand, Harry Phipps was a pretty influential man. He was pretty wealthy. And so, in my opinion, that usually leads to safer results for that person. And so then the second person that I'm going to discuss is Arthur Stanley Brown. And the reason that I think that he's a strong suspect is because he committed a similar abduction called, I believe they call it the oval abduction of a pair of siblings. And he did look a bit like the sketch. Unfortunately, they can't conclusively prove that he was in the area at the time, and there's not a lot of physical evidence because, the children have never been found. So, in my opinion, those are the 2 suspects that I would put my money on. And I hope that someday, it's discovered what happened to these children. There was, I heard a story about a woman fairly recently who claimed to be Jane. I don't know whatever came of that. I don't believe. I believe that they discovered she wasn't in fact Jane, but there's still hope that the kids are alive. They would be, I believe, in their 60s now, but there's always hope. And so I hope that one day, they have answers. And I know Jim and Nancy fought for a long time to find their children, and eventually it was just too much and they had to give up hope. And that's not, in my opinion, that's not anything against them. That's just, there's only so long that you can change your life and kind of grieve before you have to pick up the pieces and move on. Alright guys, I think that's it. As always, let's keep the conversation going, and stay safe, stay curious, and I'll see you next time. Few announcements before